Hello everyone, and welcome to the third video in the poetry series. I hope you've all had a good week. The weather certainly has changed. I know my sister-in-law covered over some of the annuals in barrels on her property for fear of frost. But the flowers are still doing pretty well. I decided to come this direction today because I'd like to take you to a cluster of trees that have intrigued me while I have been here at this lovely place. From this vantage point, you can see this cluster of cedar trees. When I look at this, it reminds me of a family, really, where all the individuals start out from the same roots and then branch off in different directions. Or even maybe the life of an individual that takes many different directions over the years, but hopefully remains rooted in some core values that help us to survive and thrive. Here we have Bell Creek again. If you have been following the series, you will remember that Bell Creek flows into the Saugeen River and makes almost an island of Ruth's property. So this week I have had many concerns about my friends down in Alabama and Florida and Mississippi, because as you've probably heard, Hurricane Sally really wreaked havoc in that area. And I want to thank you, especially my Facebook friends who sent your prayers and your comments of support. That was really appreciated. I've heard from some of my friends down there who survived intact, but with some damage, of course, and a couple of them felt that they had never been through quite such a destructive hurricane in that particular area. One of the unfortunate consequences of the high winds was that the community lost some of its beautiful live oak trees. And some of them fell, of course, on telephone lines, so the communication system is still very disrupted there. So I'm going to start today with a prayer poem that I wrote a few years ago, and the copyright belongs to prayables.com, so I'm grateful to Susan Diamond for permission to use my poem. It's called Life's Ledger. As a new week unfolds, may I be fearless in my faith, not tentative in my trust. May I lay my petitions and concerns before you, in perfect confidence that you are listening. As I reach eagerly for my blessings, may I be prepared to return to you all that I have and all that I am. May my faith deposits overflow with gratitude. As I bring to you my weaknesses, may I be empowered by the light of your love. May I never doubt that by your grace, the world will somehow always be in balance, and no one's account will ever be overdrawn. I'm using a walking stick today because this terrain is a bit uneven here, so I hope it will help me stay in balance. Draw your attention to the ground cover here. It's so lovely, and down by the driveway there in the spring, that lily of the valley is just so amazing. Just fills that whole space, and the fragrance is delicious. There's the tree from last week's video. I'm just kind of planning these week by week, but thinking ahead to next week, I think I'm going to choose a tree that has a limb that makes a little, almost like a little bench. So I'll go there next week, but I do like to conclude down by the water. So I'm going to head down this driveway now. Remember, I told you that there are 2 driveways, and throughout all the other seasons they're quite fine, but in the winter they produce a challenge. The tree I'm talking about for next week is up in that area. This is such a lovely little secluded area, but it is near a busy concession road, so I hope the sounds are not too disturbing. I mentioned the live oak trees in Fairhope, Alabama, and discovered recently that that species of oak is named because it's an evergreen, and other oaks are dormant and leafless in the winter, but those oaks remain green. And they're quite common all along the southern coast. Often there's Spanish moss hanging from the limbs, and it's so beautiful. But we have a lot of wonderful beauty up here in Canada as well. I see that just a hint of autumn colors is coming on that tree. So we'll be able to see it develop week by week. Hurricane Katrina reminded me of a hurricane a few years ago, Hurricane Katrina, that really devastated the Gulf Coast and certainly Louisiana. And I visited that area a few months after the hurricane, and I felt so much compassion for the people who were very resilient and were rebuilding, and the strength of the human spirit is very evident under those circumstances. I did write a poem called Aftermath, which I'd like to share with you. Miles and miles of broken dreams, fragments of reality, strewn carelessly by a restless sea, now subdued, contrite, confused by the memory of its vengeful wrath, unleashed in a nightmare called Katrina. So this latest hurricane bore a different nightmare's name, Sally, and coincidentally, two of my dear friends down in Fairhope, Glenn and Sally, I'm still waiting to hear from them. But Sally was not at all amused that this hurricane bore her name. And I thought I'd share another poem with you that was written in Panama City Beach, I believe, in Florida. Certainly Pensacola and different parts of Florida are very, very compromised right now with all the floodwaters. And speaking of that, I just want to mention something I found was interesting, because I know we've been sending a lot of prayers to Fairhope and to all the area, but my focus has been on Fairhope, and I thought it interesting to read that they had an anti-surge in Mobile Bay, that originally the hurricane was predicted to travel right up there, but because of the wind shift changes, it actually drew water away from the shoreline there. There's such mystery. Sea life. Power of the ocean, wonder of the sea, relentless, yearning ever for a far and distant land, waves in constant motion, time's eternal plea that love will leave you never with an empty, outstretched hand. Sweetly flows the notion, broken hearts can be released, unscarred, unblemished, perfect shells upon the sand. And I always want to include a little segment that I call Breathe, that stands for Beautiful Rhyming English Adds to Healing Energy. So I just want to give you a little bit of time to take some deep breaths as you listen to the sounds of the water. I'm sure that many of you have had a very stressful week. The Coin by Sarah Teasdale. Into my heart's treasury I slipped a coin that time cannot take, nor thief purloin. Oh, better than the minting of a gold-crowned king is the safe-kept memory of a lovely thing. And the lyrics from the song You'll Never Walk Alone. When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of a storm, there's a golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. Apparently, that song was composed for a Broadway musical in 1945 and released by Jerry and the Pacemakers in 1963. So if you're facing any particular storms this week, I hope that you can walk on with hope in your heart. And I just want to conclude with a short verse. I'll tell you the origins of it next week, but it was in a book of poetry that my aunt used to send to me. And I found it and thought of it today, really. It's called Harvest for Eternity. One man plowed an open field and planted winter wheat. He labored for some months before his harvest was complete. Another wished his work to last his lifetime through, and so he set a tree of oak, and then with pride watched it grow. Another planned eternity with manner true and mild. He placed a noble thought into the heartstring of a child. So even the mighty oak can fall if the storm is severe enough, but the thoughts that we put out there into the universe can endure forever. So maybe we should just all plant a noble thought, especially in the heartstream of a child this week, because our children are certainly suffering through this pandemic. When I see all their little masked faces going off to school with the message that somehow that could be a dangerous location, I really feel for them, and I'm so encouraged and impressed by the efforts that the teachers and all the support staff and you as parents too are showing to try to make this as normal and as fun and creative time as possible. Really commend you for that. So have a great week, everyone, and I hope you'll come back next week for the 4th video in this series. Bye for now.